Hello and welcome to my channel, where I show off the places that I travel to from large cities to villages. Throughout each video I ask and try to answer a question about what makes each place special. Nearly every year, the Tour de France rolls through this town. Since 1930, 78 out of the last 96 tours have come through here. The only place that beats that set is Paris itself. This place is Pau, France, a beautiful city on the edge of the French Pyrenees. In this video, I want to answer what makes Pau so special that the Tour de France, the most famous bike race, and a worldwide advertisement for French tourism, almost always chooses Pau for a leg or two of the race. The only natural place to start in Pau is the Château de Pau, the impressive castle at the center of town. The castle gave birth to Pau's most famous son, Henri IV. Before we get to the man, look at the building. The Château de Pau has relics from each era of French history, has a medieval keep, a Renaissance courtyard, neo-gothic additions, each century leaving its own mark on the stone. The 33-meter tower was built by Gaston Fébou. In the 14th century, the Renaissance courtyard came later, with the grand staircase carved with the intertwined initials of the monarchs who passed through. Inside, the Salle de Saint-Couvert is lined with tapestries. It is a serious castle, and it produced a serious king. Henri IV, born right here in Pau in 1553, born into the French Wars of Religion. Protestants versus Catholics. The country was more or less in a civil war for religion. His father was Catholic, and his mother, who raised him, a Protestant. In 1572, he marries Margaret de Valois. Thousands of Protestants flood the city for the wedding. 6 days later, St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. His own wedding guests are murdered in the streets, and he's forced to convert to Catholicism at knife point to survive. He escapes. He rejoins the Protestants. He fights his way across France and ends up heir to the throne. Paris still won't have him, so he converts to Catholicism again, this time by choice. His famous line, "Paris is well worth a mass." It works, and he becomes King of France in 1589. And then in 1598, he passes the Edict of Nantes, granting religious freedom to Protestants, which has really become his lasting legacy. And this effectively ends the wars of religion in France. The next decade involves him rebuilding a country destroyed by decades of war. And then in 1610, he was stabbed in his carriage in Paris by a Catholic fanatic. The 16th attempt on his life was the one that finally succeeded. While his legacy does not include the many wars with other European powers and accusations of being a womanizer, you can say he was much more devoted to his country than he was to his wife. Still, he was one of the better monarchs who have ruled France simply by leaving the country in a much better place than he was born into. All of that started in this beautiful castle in Pau, France. After Henry, Pau settled back into being what it had always been. A beautiful city with even more beautiful views of the mountains behind it. In 1839, a Scottish physician named Alexander Taylor moved to Pau to recover from illness. He loved it so much that he never left. In 1842, he published a book on the curative influence of the climate of Pau and the mineral waters of the Pyrenees on disease. And it changed everything. The climate, he argued, was uniquely restorative, good for the lungs, good for the soul, and for anything that ailed you. The British aristocracy read it and immediately started arriving by the thousands. Pau then became the original snowbird hotspot, the way that American retirees today move to Arizona or Florida to escape the cold of the winter. That's exactly what the wealthiest people in the world were doing here in the 1800s. By 1879, around 2,000 incredibly wealthy Americans were wintering in Pau, with even more English aristocrats alongside them. It was a place for the wealthy to be seen. They brought their habits with them. They established the first golf course on the continent of Europe. They ran fox hunts. They held horse races at the Pont Long racecourse. Walk around Pau today and you can still feel it. The villas, the parks, the wide streets laid out for leisurely promenading. This is a town that was shaped by people with too much money and nowhere to be. And honestly, it is beautiful. So the wealthy are here. The hotels are going up. The villas are spreading across the hillsides. And someone has an obvious idea. What if we built a promenade to frame the view of the mountains properly? The idea was first suggested by Napoleon I, but it took nearly a century for it to actually happen. In 1891, an engineer named Jean-Charles Alphand, who had worked alongside Haussmann in the redesign of Paris, drew up the plans. His ambition was simple: give Pau its own version of the Promenade des Anglais in Nice. a grand boulevard open on one side to an unobstructed panorama of the Pyrenees mountain range. The problem was the terrain. Half of the boulevard sits on the natural edge of the cliff plateau. The other half had to be built on a viaduct supported by 49 pillars. They essentially engineered a platform over the cliff to give the town view that it has today. Construction ran from 1893 to 1899, and when it was finished, the poet Alphonse de Lamartine put it perfectly. Pau has the most beautiful view on earth, just as Naples has the most beautiful view of the sea. Standing there today, it is hard to argue with them. Right along the boulevard sits the Iglesia San Martin. Completed in 1871 and built to replace an older church that had simply become too small for the growing city. The architects of the time aimed to improve and replicate the Gothic style that was popular some 400 years before it was built. From today's perspective, it is old architecture built to replace even older architecture. Between the boulevard, the church, the grand hotels, and the mountain views, this was Pau at its absolute peak, a purpose-built stage for the 19th century's most fashionable audience. On the other side of town, there is the Iglesia Saint-Jacques, which has its roots in 1651, when the Cordeliers built a small chapel here to welcome pilgrims on their way to Santiago de Compostela. By the 19th century, with the town booming and the wealthy Europeans pouring in, the modest chapel simply wasn't worth keeping up. Construction on the new neogothic church began in 1861 and was completed in 1868, 3 years before St. Martin's. Inside, there are 54 stained glass windows, all listed as historical monuments. The twin spires you see today are actually restored, as recently as 2012, and at 22 meters, they're taller than the originals. It's the kind of church that reminds you that this town, for a period in the mid-1800s, had almost unlimited money flowing through it, that they could build 2 churches finished within a few years of each other. The old center of the city is a beautiful place, and a perfect place to explore the beautiful views of the mountains and the chateau, and also explore the pretty streets and search for shops and great local food and bakeries and bars. The best breakfast pain au chocolat came from Maison Costanti. As the city modernized and as the wealthy citizens got tired of climbing the stairs to the Boulevard des Pyrénées, in 1908 they built a funicular between the train station and the boulevard. When it's open, it is a free ride to the top, which it sadly was not open at the time of the visit. What I really love about Pau, and maybe the rest of France as a whole, is how uniform the architecture is in the historic centers of the towns and cities. I assume that the old town has strict design standards, and you can see it, and for me, where there are strict design standards, the details of the building becomes highlighted as the difference between one building and another. One of my favorite buildings broke the consistency of these houses with what appeared to be an almost entirely intact medieval house decorated with a beautiful garden set between a street of 19th century buildings that make up the rest of the town. In looking at this architecture, I'd assume that this is what the town looked like before the Scottish physician Alexander Taylor showed up and made the town a vacation town for the wealthy. The whole time that we stayed in France, we had very good food, and especially in Pau too. We had a great meal at La Ruse, a lovely restaurant offering shareables. We also stayed at the Hôtel de Grammont, which I love for exactly the reasons that modern hotels have forgotten. It is classic in style, it's clean, functional, they have beautiful old furniture that has been maintained rather than replaced with something cheap and modern. The shower wasn't updated, which was a good thing because it was the first shower in 5 hotels that didn't spill water all over the bathroom floor. But the best part about it was its location right in the center of Pau. It was the perfect spot to explore the city. Les Halles de Pau, the modern covered market on Rue de la République, sells regional specialties. The duck, cheese, wine, and honey from local farms make for a great souvenir. The university here, the Université de Pau, gives the city over 17,000 students and nearly 4,000 researchers. It keeps Pau young, keeps it energetic, stops it from becoming a museum of itself. And the city was awarded the label of City of Art and History in 2011, a formal recognition for something that you feel just walking around. And the scale of it is worth saying out loud. It is the largest urban center in the entire French Pyrenees of over 200,000 people. On our sunset walk, we looked at the golden hour sunset over the chateau when a group of older French couples started to dance to an accordion just at the entrance to the city from the castle. This created the perfect atmosphere to enjoy the best that Pau has to offer, when suddenly they asked us to join the dance. They taught the dance in French, and I did my best to learn by watching since I don't speak any French. And this is a moment that will be one to remember for a lifetime. It felt like a challenge straight out of the amazing race, except I would have needed a bit more practice to hit every step perfectly and pass the challenge. One last thing, in 1909 the Wright brothers chose Pau to demonstrate their flying machine to the world. They set up the first flying school here, a tradition that has continued through the aerospace industry of Pau and more famously of the nearby city of Toulouse. Going back to the question of why the Tour de France always comes to Pau every year. The route markers were already going up in town when we visited, and after seeing the town, to me it's obvious why Pau is a yearly destination for the race. It is a beautiful town near the beautiful mountains of the Pyrenées, the charming architecture is stunning, the people were friendly, and through these videos you can see the beauty of a town that makes a perfect backdrop for an advertisement for the small cities of France. Additionally, the stunning mountain range makes for a perfect backdrop for the brutal climb into the mountains for every leg of the race that goes into the Pyrenees during the Tour de France. Every city has a thing, the thing that explains why the city is the way it is, and the reasons that people always keep coming back. And Pau, for that, is the view. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed my terrible pronunciation of French words, and please like and comment if you want to let me know what you thought about it, and subscribe for more videos.